Welcome everyone to LG Demo 4.2. The subject of this one is making the decision between finishing or not finishing a diagram completely. So let's get right into it. So this is the second of two promised supplemental videos to LG demonstration number 4. The first supplement, which was 4.1, was about how to better perform the actual act of filling in diagrams. So this wasn't about deciding whether or not you were going to fill in the diagram. This was just about, I've chosen to fill in the diagram, how do I do it? So more specifically, 4.1 covered the need to start filling in a diagram with the mandatory consequences of the information you inserted, which either came from the question stem or from an answer choice. Then, filling in the rest of the diagram with non-mandatory entities, with the objective of just finding a way to complete the diagram. You don't really need to care about anything else other than just finding a way to finish it out, one way or the other. Today's supplement, 4.2, covers how to decide between finishing or not finishing a diagram. And I have decide in quotation marks for reasons that we'll get into later. But in broad strokes, for any non-open-ended question, one of those, which is one of those if questions that gives you something to plug into your baseline diagram. So like if, Q is in slot 2, which of the following must be true? That makes this a not open-ended question because it's within the context of putting Q into slot 2. That's what the question gave us. And so the first thing you do is plug in the information from the question stem, and as soon as you're done with the mandatory consequences of plugging that stuff in, check to see if you can select an answer. There is a decent chance that the above won't be enough. You'll maybe only get a few eliminations and usually no correct answer right out of the gate. If so, try to finish out the diagram with non-mandatory entities using any non-eliminated answer choices as a guide to how you're going to try to fill those in whenever it's applicable. For open-ended questions, these are the ones where the question stems don't give you anything to plug in, such as the ones that just say which of the following could be true, and that's it. There's nothing to plug in based on the question stem. Plug in the information from the answer choice you want to test, as per the table of power. As usual, start with mandatory consequences. Once you're done with those, see if that's enough to pick an answer, kind of like the non-open-ended questions. You should start seeing a theme here. And if that's not enough, start filling in the rest of the diagram with non-mandatory insertions, again with the goal of just finding a way to finish out the diagram. Partway through actually finishing out the diagram completely. If you have enough information to determine if the answer you're testing could be true, must be false, etc., whatever the question actually asked you, stop working and make a selection or elimination as appropriate. If that's not enough, then finish out the diagram, and that should be enough for you to make that choice, that determination, whether or not the answer you tested could be true, must be false, etc. So you should have noticed from the previous slide that it's less of a decision and more like, whenever possible, eliminate or select answers based on partial diagrams. So yeah, mandatory consequences only, partial diagrams, see if that's enough, because you don't want to do any more work than is necessary for this section. When partial diagrams turn out to be insufficient, keep filling in the diagram until you can make a decision. And just because you couldn't do it right out of the gate with only mandatory consequence information, that doesn't mean you have to finish out the rest of the diagram. Sometimes you could just start filling in and maybe instead of just 20% done, you're 60% done with the diagram. But if that's enough to make eliminations or selections, do that. All the potential complications come from, the difference between open-ended questions and non-open-ended questions. And there is a significant strategic difference. The proper usage of the table of power, especially when it comes to the must be true category, and recognizing when you have enough information about an answer choice to make the call about whether it could be true, must be false, etc. I guess I could make just an entirely different table and video about just that subject alone, but for reasons, again, that I'll discuss a little bit further on here. I'm just going to kind of cut things short here. So, some of you at this point might be wondering what happened to middle. Some of you might have wondered that quite some time back. But yeah, supplements 4.1 and 4.2, they are pretty huge departures from the way I prefer to teach. Arguably, this entire channel, because it consists entirely of pre-recorded instruction, it's already a massive deviation away from my way of teaching. So, I have serious reservations about the value of continuing this sort of video supplement thing where I take a deeper dive into some subjects that I thought I kind of brushed past very quickly in the actual video itself. And I have reservations because I think offering a set way of doing things does so many people so much more harm than good. That being said, I do think that the decision-making sort of tree process, whatever you want to call it, that I detailed in the previous slides is robust enough to be universally applicable. It's like the table of power in that sense. But I want to emphasize that it's just one possible way among many to reach the correct result. As with any form of technical LSAT instruction, as I've been saying to you all along, pretty much at the end of every video, your best bet is to do things the way that work best for you. Even if nobody else seems to agree with you, if it's what works for you and you get it done on time, you get it right, that's right for you. There's no need to do it differently. And within the context of that, there's stuff that you already do on your own in your own way that works. Anything I teach you, you should see as just merely an alternative to try when the things you normally do don't work for you. But yeah, and so in kind of another departure, you've seen in all my other videos, I discuss a concept or objective at the beginning, and then I attempt to demonstrate it on actual questions, especially in LG, that's what I've done. I started doing the same thing for this one, and like a couple hours in, because yeah, I mean, I really struggled with how to actually sort of deliver in a way that I think was distinct enough to make it different than anything else that I do. And I really felt it was an enormous waste of time for both of us, you, the watcher, and me, the maker of the content. The material from both 4.1 and 4.2, they really are things that I do consistently on all my LG work throughout the channel. It may not look consistent if you're not seeing it, and that's what this next bullet point is about. I think the primary value of 4.2 in particular is just in the explicit laying out of my decision process. Doing actual questions, like I said, is going to look essentially identical to everything that I've done in LG on this channel. So I don't want to leave you hanging though. If you've read and heard the things that I've talked about on the previous few slides, and you're trying to do it on your own and it's not really working for you, you don't really know what I mean by certain things or how that applies to a certain specific situation. So yeah, if you have questions about how either 4.1 or 4.2 are supposed to work for a specific game or question, email me about it. I know a lot of you guys are emailing me, and they're always welcome, they're always good. And so I extend that offer very specifically for this particular one. And after all, I just want to remind you, I did make 4.0, 4.1, and 4.2 really upon request. 4.0 began as something that I made for an actual active tutoring student of mine that I meet on a weekly basis. And yeah, because we couldn't make a particular lesson, the student requested that I give them a breakdown of the game in LG Demo number 4. And I was just going to leave it at that, but it just so happened that 2 other people emailed me in the same week asking for help on that particular game. So I was like, I just adapted the video that I made for that particular student for general consumption. And then 4.1 and 4.2, I got a lot of emails after I put up 4.0 asking about the strategy notes, because I had promised in the video that I'd make these supplements. Here I am just kind of following through on that promise. So yeah, again, I just don't see the value of making like another 40+ minute video where I do basically the same thing, and the only difference is that I mentioned the decision-making process at the beginning of the slide, and then hopefully I mention it a few more times. I pepper the mentions throughout what I'm doing, but it's going to look and sound exactly the same as the other stuff that I do. So again, the sole value that I see in 4.2 here is just the previous few slides where I just laid out what it is I actually do for decision-making process. And as promised, this one is I'm not really going to do anything more. We've reached this point. Thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, all the algorithmic stuff, and of course I do want to reiterate, emailing me is probably the best thing for both you and for me, because things do get pretty specific, and that's really the primary value that I offer people, is very targeted, specific help. So yeah, don't be a stranger, don't be afraid to reach out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.